Our Secretary General has covered very extensively all the activities in the last 1 year, more than 1 year, since the time that the present setup, including me, took charge of the activities of the forum. But let me highlight a few points and then I will discuss something about what we have concluded more or less in various important webinars where we had secretaries of the Government of India and very eminent speakers on what is the vision, what is the future that holds for us in all segments of energy sector. At the outset, let me wish all the members and the family members, entire India Energy family, in India Energy Forum family, the season's greetings and a coming Happy New Year. Let us hope that COVID-19 shadow will finally vanish in coming few months and we should resume our normal activities in all spheres in the country and in the whole world. Friends, over a year back, I was entrusted by all of you the responsibility of the president of this truly independent think tank. I said truly independent because it does not represent any industries, any particular segments of the sector, and it has such high-level professionals, dignitaries from government, from industry, from academics, that people look upon us, that we will discuss and we will generate consensus which would not favor against the other, that it would create win-win situation and it would be really independent of any bias in favor or against any particular segment of the industry and economy. So therefore, I'm grateful that this responsibility was entrusted to me by all of you. I have tried to follow, in fact, all of us have tried to follow the great legacies which were established, great legacies and in fact footprints which were established by the founder president, Mr. P.S. Bami, who is present today. I also add to the welcome that has already been extended for his gracious presence, and followed by him, Mr. Anil Razdan. So the whole group is trying to follow the footprint and trying to process established by them way back, 20 years back. It was just said that we celebrated 20 years a few months ago. We miss today some of our very eminent members, particularly I remember Mr. Mehta was right from the beginning associated with this. He was treasurer till the last moment. Dr. Banerjee, who was an important member of the group and was chairman of the vertical on nuclear, and a few others where we have just held and observed a minute silence in their memory. Let me welcome all the new members, chairman and conveners of various verticals. And we have particularly Dr. B.K. Garg, whom I invited after consulting many of our colleagues, and he readily responded positively to be a member and to be the treasurer in India Energy Forum. I invited Mr. Anil Sardana again after consulting our colleagues to head the vertical on transmission and distribution. Also on regulation, but regulation now we are trying to put a different emphasis for all these sectors, not only power, but all these segments of energy where we already have or we will have in the future regulators. Dr. Grover, I requested him to chair the nuclear group and he readily agreed. I requested Mr. Rakesh Nath to chair the vertical on regulation. Mr. Misra, Mr. Malhotra for the petroleum sector, and Mr. B.P. Singh, who agreed to be the convener along with Mr. Rakesh Nath as the chairman of the vertical on regulation. As Secretary General has mentioned, we have slightly restructured and changed the face, made it a little more extensive, the total under the leadership of our Amarjit. And we are able to cover larger space, larger number of subjects, larger number of issues with the present system of having it on IT, not the print media. It has given us some extra accommodation to take care of this requirement. We have strengthened the structure, as I mentioned to you, and we will continue to do it. Maybe in coming months, we might again think of doing within conventional power to give further focus on hydro, because there is a thinking, it seems, in the government that with solar becoming so extensively uh, covering the energy sector of India, backup of hydro, along with not only conventional hydro but also pump storage, might become inevitable, and therefore an extra attention perhaps may be given to this hydro sector. So maybe we might create an exclusive vertical on hydro to give emphasis on this, because in all our deliberations, perhaps in the last couple of years, we have missed out. Not that we have missed out altogether, but we have missed out giving extraordinary emphasis on requirement of hydro, which is also renewable, and at the same time, in the coming years, its need will be felt even more. MOU with the International Solar Alliance, as the Secretary General mentioned, it was not only an honor to sign it, but it was an honor also to be given an opportunity to speak in their biggest forum of this International Solar Alliance, in which large number of representatives representing different governments of the various countries were present, where I could speak on the rationale of with the International Solar Alliance and what will be the role of India Energy Forum along with the International Solar Alliance to further the cause and the objective of the International Solar Alliance. And I have already spoken to the Director General, and then we will be continuing to do some work together. I may also inform you that we have taken up with various countries in South Asia that they would set up forums in their own country and we will have a collaboration. Bangladesh has already done it. Bhutan is in the process. Nepal is also in the process. And I had a talk with the president of Bangladesh Energy Forum. We might in coming, maybe during the year 2022, might create some sort of an understanding and collaboration with the energy forums of the South Asian countries and talk on how cooperation in energy sector will be useful for the overall cause of sustainability, overall cause of climate change, overall cause of energy access. We've also been thinking of our own office because we have worked with a rented office for about 20 years. Economics is an issue, fund is an issue, but maybe in 2022 we will give a little more attention to this subject, whether we should have it and in what way we can fund it, so that this forum, which is so important and so respected, must have maybe a small setup, but must have an office of its own, so that we have the pride of most of these professional organizations have their offices and we have the pride of office space. We'll try. This has been so far this has been an exercise where we have several constraints, but let us see how we get over all these constraints. Now let me turn to the main issue of how we look at energy. I tried to put together all that we have discussed in the last 15, 18 months, because as you are all aware, several things are happening and with great speed in the energy sector. If one sector of the economy is seeing and experiencing vibrancy and dynamism of things that are happening so fast, not only technological changes, but technological disruptions in every segment of energy, that all these sub-segments and segments have started re-looking and revisiting their own business portfolio. So energy is so critical to the economy, not only in India, but everywhere in the world, that it has always remained at the center of global attention. Major global challenges like providing energy access to vast majority of people in developing and underdeveloped countries, ensuring adequate and reliable power to industry and trade on the one hand, and carbon emission and climate change associated with energy development and energy consumption on the other have dominated the debate over last more than 40 years. What, however, we are witnessing and experiencing during last 5 years is unprecedented. Serious concerns about air quality, several difficulties, several constraints that are being seized are unbelievable. Technological disruptions and their successes in solar energy associated with incredible interests and enthusiasm in exploring and unfolding new options like hydrogen, methanol, coal gasification, carbon capture and utilization. Equally interesting developments have come forward and are continuing. On demand consumption side as well, transport sector shifts from petroleum fuels to electric vehicles, diesel locomotives to electric traction in railways, agriculture irrigation on diesel pumps to solar pumps or solar power driven pumps, and household kitchen gadgets from gas to electricity are such major shifts which have already started and have powerful potential to radically transform the energy landscape and its profile in India and all over the world. Obviously, these far-reaching changes, and that too with an ambition to drive them with accelerated speed, would inevitably bring with them huge challenges, quite often with conflicting consequences. Hence, it will require not only a textbook approach of planning and managing change, but much more than that. Debates and declaration in COP26 have had mixed responses from various quarters. There are those who want carbon net zero, and there are differing interpretations of this term, carbon net zero, much sooner than what many others have the time frames in mind. India's position was very nicely articulated by none other than our Honorable Prime Minister, later elaborated by Indian delegation, accelerated. A high acceleration would not only mean a higher cost to economy, which by itself is an important factor. COP26 did not get into this, and there is no specific commitment for climate finance. That is an issue. Honorable Prime Minister did mention about that global community must talk of climate finance. Besides the cost to economy, there are several social issues likely to be caused by redundancy of technology. Like if coal has to be reduced, coal plants have to be reduced, then there are social and human issues like unemployment, workforce, their problems. This does not mean that we deprive ourselves of the benefits of technology developments and innovation. In fact, it means that we do so with proper planning and take care of all nuances of managing change, including social implications. During last year, India Energy Forum, as our Secretary General has mentioned, organized over 25 webinars covering all important segments of energy associated issues. Concerned experts of the sector do see, and let me underline, do see several solutions for economy and society at large with due and higher weightage to the contribution that their sector will make. But what has made our discussion different is that after deliberations, we have invariably come to consensus. It's not that it has remained one-sided. If we talk of nuclear, then it is not nuclear is the solution. If we talk of renewable, it is not that renewable is the solution. If we talk of coal, not only coal is the solution. So I think that has been the maturity of these discussions and richness of these discussions. So they have established a balanced approach on how to map over a 10 to 30 year time frame the changing profile of each segment of energy sector with due regard to the requirement of addressing climate change concerns as well as developmental needs. Experts of each sector and also other did converge, as I said, on the urgent need for according high priority to research. That was one of the gains of these discussions. High priority research aimed at efficient and low carbon and zero emission energy development. In my analysis, the progressively changing scenario would appear as follows. A disclaimer in this regard is necessary. And I must say that we are predicting some technological changes and disruptions, but there could be difference. So therefore, a disclaimer that if technological changes and technological disruptions take a rapid turn, rapid break, then things might change. But considering whatever is the development so far, and we are able to predict the development, the future, as I see in Indian context may look like as outlined below. Solar and wind power will grow on a stand-alone as well as hybrid mode. Potential for solar power in India is over 750 gigawatt, 750,000 megawatt. And for wind, it is estimated at 350,000 megawatt, 350 gigawatt. In the medium term, till the year 2030, the target of 500 megawatt is highly challenging, but achievable, maybe with a few years of delay. However, financing of these projects may be constrained if a state-owned distribution, that's important. If a state-owned distribution companies keep worsening their financial performance, then that would be a constraint. Availability of land and compatible transmission may also be important factors, but not insurmountable. Solar contributes about 5%. Now it is only about 5%, a little less than 5% of power generated presently. It may increase to about 30% power generation, I am mentioning, not the capacity. 30% by the year 2040. An optimistic scenario could take it to significantly higher proportions. So as I said, that certain disclaimer is necessary. And maybe if we become very optimistic, if we succeed on some of the things, then by 2040, this figure can also change. Maybe 30% may become a little more. Proportion of hydropower capacity has been declining, now less than 15%. It could be a good backup for solar power, and hence we may expect that it may receive some government support. I definitely feel that it will have some positive support from the government, including for pumped storage plants, and may improve its share. Storage hydro projects should and may receive respectful attention. So far it has been criticized, because unless you have storage, be it hydropower, then full backup of solar may be rather difficult. It may be okay, but not as good as with the storage projects. And there could be compelling rationale to support solar power expansions. Hydro projects definitely deserves to be supported. However, share increase may not be substantial due to long gestation. Cross-border power supply. Here I must say that because I'm doing some work with the South Asian countries, reform and government power secretaries roundtable of the South Asia, I do see possibility of cooperation among South Asian countries in this, because hydropower of Nepal, hydropower of Bhutan could come to India, and our solar could go to these countries, particularly Bangladesh, maybe when we have transmission connectivity with Sri Lanka. So I do see in this time frame larger cooperation among South Asian countries to solve both the problems of energy access, of the problem of climate change, and renewable to occupy a better space. Nuclear is a zero carbon power generation technology. Its share, however, has hovered around 2% of total power. Nuclear power could also be a good backup for India's ambitious solar power agenda, and hence it needs to be supported. In our forum, we have discussed almost in 3 or 4 seminars. Last one was also supported by and addressed by the Secretary Department of Atomic Energy himself. Ideally, we would expect and hope that nuclear power should contribute about 10%. Is a tall expectation of total power. This will require major policy level reform, which has been overdue. overview. Even in the present provisions of the Atomic Energy Act, which do provide a role for public sector companies, its implementation has remained unimplemented. You can say it has not been implemented. That we have remained stuck up only with the nuclear power corporation. I definitely feel organizations like NTPC and others could have contributed to the capacity, and it could have been more than what it is today. Today it is about 1.8% or so. In coming time, I do see the time frame that we are talking, maybe not more than 5 to 10 years. We do see not only more public sector joining hands, either joint venture on its own, or even private sector role in development of nuclear power, with a strong and maybe that regulatory mechanism, safety regulatory mechanism is already strong, but maybe when we have larger number of players, this may be further strengthened. So I think if we did this, then we could definitely aspire with an optimistic proportion in next 20, 30 years of about 10%. Otherwise, I don't see the possibility of this going beyond about 4 to 5% if you take the time frame. If present situation continues, it might decline also because other capacities will continue growing. Gas-based power generation, which is about 7% of total capacity, may see only a marginal growth in the capacity, but its proportion may decline in overall power capacity. Growth of gas in other sectors like city gas distribution may see a reasonable improvement. Gas constitutes about 6% of energy basket presently. In our seminars on gas, the expectation is 15%, 6% in energy basket to rise to 15% energy. In view of change scenario of thrust on renewables, this looks unlikely. In view of almost 50% dependence of gas on import, which is today, and it is likely to continue in that manner, this looks unlikely. And also about price volatility. The situation becomes more complex. We will be able to enhance its share to 10% in energy basket, but this also will be an optimistic scenario because of the price volatility and also domestic. But if the domestic production increases, where it seems now in the last few months, there is a ray of hope, and people say that domestic production might increase, net domestic production might increase, then scenario may slightly change. Petroleum sector, we had a very interesting discussion. The Petroleum Secretary himself was there. Petroleum sector continues to be heavily dependent on an import. This is a concern now everywhere, which now stands at more than 85% of demand and consumption. This has led to transport sector, including railways, making ambitious plans to shift to electricity. Pace has been moderate in view of other implications, but the direction is clear. This level of import of petroleum is unsustainable. As the energy provider, the sector is rightly looking at other options. All the organizations have started looking at other options. Besides petroleum products, it may also move to battery, it may move to hydrogen, electric vehicle charging, and renewables in a significant way. A beginning has already been made. Some of the large petroleum companies abroad have already started diversifying into these areas. Reliance, the largest petroleum company, has started on a very ambitious plan for hydrogen. Some of the petroleum companies in public sector have also decided on diversification into areas mentioned above. That brings us to coal. Coal-based thermal power plants are obvious targets of carbon-free and net zero debate. There are many who would like to see coal power plants being phased out sooner than later. For India, coal is the most important energy resource with huge reserves. Accelerating growth planned for solar and wind, no doubt, will take away a major share of coal-based power and impede substantially the growth rate of coal power plants. However, keeping in view the fact that India needs to go much beyond the present level of per capita consumption, which is now just 1200 kilowatt hour, which is less than 1/3 of the global average, the transition period of 20 to 30 years will see coal power to be growing, not declining. Power in absolute terms to be growing. percentage, though its share in power generation will keep declining, and the growth rate of thermal power may come down. New power plants, in one of the papers have said that growth rate may come down from 5 to 6% to 2-3%, but it will grow. It will not decline in the next 20-30 years. I tend to agree with the conclusions of the International Energy Agency in their India Energy Outlook 2021 in this regard, which says, as things stand, solar accounts for less than 4% of India's electricity generation and coal close to 70% now. By 2040, I'm quoting, by 2040, they converge in the low 30% in steps, and this switch is even more rapid in other scenarios. That means progressively, this might reduce to 30%, both of them. One will reduce from 70% to about 30%, another will increase from 5% or 4% to 30%. That is a scenario International Energy Agency has predicted. Large thermal power companies in public and private sector, such as NTPC, Tata Power, Adani Power, have already reworked their business plans and have embarked upon ambitious expansion of renewable power portfolio. They have also started preparing plans for hydrogen energy. Coal sector will need to prepare. We had a good program on coal sector. We had Secretary Coal himself being there, and then we had very eminent personalities making contribution. The coal sector will need to prepare for managing the transition. So there is not the question of coal going away or vanishing. It's a question of managing the transition. Power sector, which is the largest consumer of coal, to the extent of more than 75%, is shifting in a significant way to other technologies. Its present share in power generation, as I said, is projected to go down from 70% to 30% in next 20 years. The projected scenario for thermal power on coal has been discussed in the previous, I may mention to you. Coal can continue to be relevant with reasonable growth if technology development unfolds low carbon and carbon-free processes. Diversification of coal industry is another option. Coal to hydrogen, coal gasification, and coal to methanol are a few technology development possibilities. Diversification into renewables or storage battery could also be a good opportunity for coal sector. Challenges and compulsions of climate change concerns will also necessitate more extensive and closer cooperation and collaboration in the field of energy, as I mentioned, among South Asian countries. In energy sector, this will lead to better understanding and appreciation of mutual interdependence in the interest of efficient and optimal delivery of energy, ultimately in the larger interest of people. Solar and wind power of India, hydropower of Bhutan and Nepal, gas and nuclear power of Bangladesh, and wind power of Sri Lanka will be traded in a fully developed South Asian power market. As I mentioned to you, why did we create regulation as a separate vertical? Because market development, market mechanism, market design has become one of the important portfolios or important requirements of the regulatory mechanism. And this will continue to, I mean, you may be seeing that every 6 months, 10 months, 8 months, something or the other new products regulatory commissions are trying to bring so that market develops. And similar thing will happen in gas sector. Ultimately, similar thing may happen in the coal sector. So, and that might extend to South Asian countries as a whole. We also have a joint forum, a joint committee of the regulators of South Asian countries. So I think South Asia power market will see a different scenario, and that will influence the energy profile of each of the countries. Next 10 to 20 years, we'll see major paradigm shifts in the energy sector profile of India. In fact, in the world as a whole, challenges for developing economies will be enormous. The transition will face predictable as well as uncertain variables. A skill of managing change will be a test. There would be no choice than to address the challenges and implement a successful transition. We should definitely be looking forward to a more new look energy sector and an efficient and cleaner energy scenario. And this is what I think on the positive point I would say, that it would be a more efficient and a much more cleaner energy scenario in next 30, 40, 50 years. Thank you very much. We have a discussion on this very issue. We will have our transmission and distribution people, and learning out of the experiences of different countries and the nature of devastations that are taking place. Something is happening. Disaster Management Authority, they in collaboration with Power Grid and others, they do. But I think let's let India Energy Forum organize a discussion where we have transmission people, power supply people, and also disaster management authority people to discuss what are the lessons of different countries which we can relate to our situation and what better can be done.